Like many of you, I remember the impossible coolness and swagger of the original Acura NSX, a car that debuted when I was just 10 years old. It was effortlessly magical, unimaginably low to the ground, and it looked like something from another world. So far beyond Ferrari and Lamborghini at the time that some bedroom posters were no doubt removed and replaced because of it. The NSX somehow seemed simultaneously familiar and unattainable, a car that you could see yourself driving yet would likely never get the chance. So the NSX is fast, capable, and easy on the eyes. It has everyday usability combined with serious performance potential. So why doesn't it sell more? Why hasn't it upended the supercar establishment the same way the original NSX did some 30 years ago? Well, I have a few ideas.
But here we are, 30 years later, and we've both changed quite a bit in the past 3 decades. My passion for cars remains the same, but does the NSX's combination of approachability and supercar performance hold up just as it did back in the 90s? That's what I'm here to find out. Let's start with what the NSX isn't. It's not really a spiritual successor to the original car, not even close, but I don't think it should be. I think it's its own thing. I think it's something more than that. See, the first NSX was a featherweight scalpel, a reliable missile fired straight into the faces of the unreliable supercar establishment. It was a precision instrument, in much the same way that a watch made by Rolex or some other fancy watch company that's not named Rolex is a precision instrument at telling time and the date. But this new NSX lives in a much more complicated world, a world where Ferraris and Lamborghinis are mostly reliable, Porsches look exactly the same, McLarens are extremely lightweight, and Maseratis are still trash. So what does an everyday supercar look like in this new world order? When the new NSX debuted a few years ago, some people thought it looked too busy, that there's too many lines, or it was too overstyled. I personally wasn't one of them. I thought the NSX, even with the old nose, looked pretty good. It had supercar proportions, it looked aggressive, it looked futuristic. It had the right look to capture the attention in a busy supercar field. What kind of world do we live in where the supercar field is crowded with entries? And why is the sun out all of a sudden? But with the updates to the nose, more carbon fiber trim, new colors such as this eye-searing thermal orange, which, let's be honest, this is a supercar color, really are helping the NSX stand out. And I think it's now looking better than ever. It's really coming into its own, and it stands up when it's placed next to a Lamborghini, a McLaren, or an Audi. But the important thing is that these looks don't come at the expense of everyday usefulness and practicality. The NSX is perfectly comfortable in everyday life. It'll even do 22 miles per gallon, and it's built right here in the United States. Unlike your Dodge, which was probably built in Canada and filled with maple syrup instead of motor oil, which would explain a lot, actually. I'm never gonna get a Dodge to test. And despite being low to the ground, the NSX has no trouble dealing with speed bumps, slight inclines, or the potholes of daily life, both literal and metaphorical. Because if you drive an NSX, you have +10 self-esteem on the self-esteem meter. And even though you're driving a mid-engine supercar, you have a reasonable amount of space inside and even a reasonable amount of cargo space in the rear. Check it out. It's not a ton of space, but it's enough to carry some bags or some groceries or suitcases full of all that money you saved by not buying an Audi R8 because you don't care what your friends think and badges aren't important to you and there's a whiff of old money about them anyway. Of course, you had to throw all that extra money away after the new Corvette came out. But I mean, what? Wait, what? What'd you say? And that livability, of course, extends into the interior, which is comfortable, ergonomically sound, and beautifully finished. Except the infotainment system, which is the old Honda one and is dumb and slow and pointless. Just put on Apple CarPlay and everything will be perfectly fine. Even good headroom for someone who's 6'6". I fit fine. There's even a handy little nook for your phone to rest in. It's almost as if they went, we know you're going to use Apple CarPlay, so lay your phone here, let it rest while you use a superior system. The seats are supportive, of course, which is what you'd expect in a mid-engine supercar, but they're still comfortable for longer trips. And in sport mode, which is sort of the default mode, it's easy to forget that you're driving a low-to-the-ground mid-engine supercar, at least until you step on the throttle. And then you're reminded that this is no ordinary Acura. And it's really not like its predecessor either. It's blisteringly fast, savage even, and it easily has the grace and the pace to keep up with cars costing far more.
The NSX boasts a 500 horsepower twin turbocharged V6, augmented by 3 electric motors that raise the total output to 573 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque, all of which runs through a 9-speed dual-clutch transmission. Keeping all that power on the ground are bespoke Continental Sport Contact 6 tires that are the tip of the spear of Acura's most advanced version of super handling all-wheel drive, which catapults the NSX to 60 in 2.7 seconds. Magnetic dampers alter the ride and handling according to how aggressive you're feeling or how loudly the crowd is cheering as you leave Cars and Coffee. Thankfully, carbon ceramic brakes are an eye-popping $10,000 option, and they'll rein you in before you go full Mustang.
So as you'd expect, the NSX steers like a supercar, which means very little effort yields very big results. The steering is supercar fast. It's very quick, it's very direct. It's not the most talkative steering, it doesn't have a ton of feedback, but it's extremely precise, especially in the higher modes. The hybrid system is really interesting in the NSX because it shifts between them seamlessly. Right now we're in sport mode, nothing much is going on, but in slow speeds, the engine will just turn off and the car will just progress on EV power, and it'll do it pretty regularly, and it's seamless as well. It does it with less of a fanfare and less of a judder and less of a kind of hiccup than it does in cars that have auto start and stop systems, which is really interesting because this is a supercar. Now here on my patented handling course, which is just a bad road near my house, the NSX rides really well, actually. We're in sport mode, which is the sort of regular mode of the NSX. The suspension is firm, but the biggest impact comes from the large wheels and extremely skinny tires. I've been in cars that are family cars that are tuned for comfort on this road, and their ride is virtually unacceptable. But here, in a supercar on this road, the ride is comfortable and composed. It's not bad at all. The interesting thing about the NSX being a hybrid is that it has regen braking.
But unlike some hybrids, the brake pedal feels fine. It's firm for a supercar. It doesn't have a ton of feel as you press farther into it, but I haven't done any race stops. Obviously, I've only had it for the weekend in normal driving. But the regenerative braking is unobtrusive. I have no idea, except on the dash, when it's braking, like braking, or it's regen braking. Also, this particular NSX has carbon ceramic rotors, so they're a little squeaky in stop and go driving, but they'll stop you, like, really fast. Not that I would know, but really fast. One of the cool things about the NSX, like a lot of modern supercars, is that the dash display totally changes when you change the nature of the car. So when you switch it over with the dynamic control into Sport Plus mode, everything turns red and the tachometer needle turns yellow and it looks all aggressive. Even the infotainment display changes to red, which I think is a nice touch. And then when you turn it into race mode, everything gets super red, super aggressive. All of your gauges pop up that you would need, like oil temperature and stuff like that. And the infotainment system basically just goes dark and it's like you need to focus on what you're doing. It's super cool, and even though it's in a lot of supercars these days, it's really fun to see it in practice. Also, this road is absolutely awful, as you could probably tell by my camera woman jumping up and down. Say hi, Ella.
Hi.
But the NSX is handling it very well. We're in sport mode, regular, suspension soaking it up. But what happens if we don't go in sport mode? What happens if we shift to Sport Plus? So I'm gonna casually change it to Sport Plus mode, which will get far more aggressive and open things up. Ella, are you holding on?
Yep.
All right, good. It's gonna get loud. That was Sport Plus mode. That wasn't even race mode. The NSX gets more fun that way.
Progress is refinement. And whereas the old NSX was one of the only refined supercars 30 years ago, the rest of the field has caught up. And now the NSX's refinement isn't as remarkable as it used to be. The current NSX doesn't raise the bar the way the old one did, not as obviously anyway. But I still think there's ways that it distances itself from the rest of the supercar field. It's a Honda, of course, which is a comforting thought when you finally decide you want to own a supercar. Its powertrain is quite advanced and really doesn't get the credit it deserves for being as forward-thinking as it was. It's essentially a similar setup to the Porsche 918 Spyder at, like 1/10 of the cost. It overperforms based on its specs on paper and posts numbers that are far beyond what you think that its horsepower would be capable of doing. And it's approachable, easy to live with, easy to drive, forgiving, and kind of comforting in its own way. It might not be a game changer, but it's truly an everyday supercar. And there's not many that can claim that, and frankly, it might be the only one. At least until the new Corvette comes along. If you like this video, please consider giving it a like. Please consider subscribing to the channel to join this community. I would really appreciate a comment. What'd you think of this video? This video is kind of near and dear to my heart because when I started doing this kind of more seriously about a year ago, I never really thought that I would be here. I never really thought that I would have these kind of opportunities. I just wanted to share my love of cars and motorcycles and the communities around them with all of you guys, and I never thought that I would actually get the opportunity to review a car like this, even drive a car like this. This is beyond surreal to me, and it's absolutely amazing. And I thank you for watching, and I thank all the people like Doug DeMuro, The Straight Pipes, Throttle House, all those guys that I admire, Redline Reviews, Matt Moran Motoring, I mean, That Dude in Blue, all of the car and motorcycle channels, Chase on Two Wheels, Do It With Dan, Walterific, Motonosity, I could name dozens, but they all inspired me to do this, to take a stab at it as a 40-year-old man with a passion for cars and motorcycles. So thank you, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing, ring the bell if you want to see more of me or more of cars like this or more of Toyota Corollas, like the other week. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Ride safe, drive safe. I'll catch you in the next video. Hopefully it'll be half as exciting as this. Take care, peace. Ugh, that was gross.
It's Powertrain.